Oop, tricky button there. Good morning. It's great to see you guys. I like how you have the same good morning like you do at the start, even now. I like the consistency, bud. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Well, I'm happy to be here with you guys today. Really just thrilled to be able to share the Word of God with you this morning. What an awesome time together in worship this morning, and really just being able to, praise our God for who He is. I'm reminded of how fragile life can be sometimes. I'm reminded of how much we take for granted sometimes as well. And, we woke up this morning, we're well, God's moving in our midst. What more could we ask for, right? I think about a lot of people around the world who don't have what we have sometimes. So I'm happy to be up here with you guys this morning. I know I spoke to so many of you last week. I just want to thank you for being so encouraging. I'm filled with gratitude. I know a lot of people who do jobs like this who are not in churches like this. They don't have people like you. I don't want to take you for granted. Thank you for being so encouraging. It's funny, in the build-up to what I wanted to share with you guys today, I had so many options. There's so much going on in our world, isn't there? There's so much going on, and it's a big Bible. And I was just speaking with a friend about what I wanted to share today, and she reminded me of how uncertain everything feels these days. I think we live in times that feel incredibly uncertain. I think there were things that seemed constant that aren't anymore. I think these changing times, they have us reaching for things to steady ourselves every now and again. We are a people racked with uncertainty, and while I do think our times are unstable, you might have heard it is an election year. You might have heard there's stuff going on in Israel. I don't think that's changed much in 3,400 years, but that tends to get us riled up in the church, doesn't it? I think we live in a day and age where the news overwhelms us with information that leaves us worried, leaves us reaching for solutions. It's a 24-hour news cycle, and you carry it with you in your pocket. And I think sometimes it dominates our focus, what's going on around us, and not so much what's going on in us. I think we're a people longing to put our faith in something and someone. And if we're not careful, we'll put our faith in the wrong things. In the build-up to this, I wanted to go over a familiar passage with you this week. In fact, I would say this passage is so familiar, this story I'm going to share is so familiar, that when we tend to read it, we tend to miss a lot of details. Because you know it well. We're going to be in 1 Samuel 17 today. We're going to look at a familiar story about David and Goliath. I know we were with David last week. We're turning back the clock a few decades now to look at, I would argue, the moment in his life that is most well known. This is an outcome that you are fully well aware of. Everyone knows what happens at the end of the conflict between David and Goliath. It's not a secret. In fact, I had to say, if we were playing Family Feud and they asked for the 5 most famous Bible stories, this probably makes that list. You'd certainly guess it. Everyone knows exactly what happens here, and in fact, this morning I'm going to do something a little different. I'm not going to look at the combat. We're not going to look at the actual fight itself, because there's actually a lot going on in the build-up to it that I think we can learn from. I think there are a lot of confidence lessons that we can learn about from this moment in David's life. What possesses a young man, we're not entirely certain of his age, but what possesses a young man to go fight a monster when no one else would? And I think that's the key. No one else would. 1 Samuel 17, we'll be diving in right here in verse 1. It says this: "The Philistines gathered their forces for war. They assembled at Socoh in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes Dammim, between Socoh and Azekah. Saul and the Israelites assembled and camped in the valley of Elah. They drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill, and the Israelites another, and the valley was between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head. He wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs, he wore bronze greaves. He had a bronze javelin that was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod. Its iron point weighed 600 shekels. And his shield bearer went ahead of him. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man, have him come down to me, and if he's able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." So the Philistine said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man. Let us fight each other." And on hearing the words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. Now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse. He was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time he had grown very old. His 3 oldest sons followed Saul to battle. The first was Eliab, the second Abinadab, the third Shammah. David was the youngest. And while the 3 oldest followed Saul, David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days this continued. The Philistine came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. One day Jesse said to his son David, "Take this ephah of roasted grain, these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers, and hurry to their camp. Take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are, bring back some assurance from them. They're with Saul and Israel, and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah fighting the Philistines." Early in the morning, David left his flock in the care of a shepherd. He loaded up and set out, just as Jesse had directed him. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines to face each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies. He ran to the battle lines to see how his brothers were. But as he was talking with them, Goliath the champion stepped out and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. Now the Israelites saw the man, and they all fled from him in great fear. And they had been saying, "Do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will give him his daughter in marriage. He will exempt his family from taxes." David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine, who removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" They repeated to him what they had been saying. But Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with those men, and he burned with anger. He said, "Why have you even come down here? With whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are. I know how wicked your heart is. You only came down here to watch the battle." "Now what have I done?" David said. "Can't I even speak?" So he turned away to someone else, and he brought up the same matter, and the men gave him the same answer. What David said had been overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on the account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." But Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man, and he's been a warrior since his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, rescued the sheep, and when the animal turned on me, I seized it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord, who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear, will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." Saul said to David, "Go and the Lord be with you." Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him, and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic, and he tried to walk around. But because he was not used to them, he said, I cannot go in these. I'm not used to them. And he took them off. We're going to stop there. Let's pray. Lord, I'm reminded now more than ever that, Lord, we are a people who are frightened. We are not unlike your people facing Goliath. Lord, we live in times that scare us, Lord, and I think we have a mindset that scares us sometimes too, Lord. Lord, and I think it's easy to forget the confidence we can draw from you and easy to put our faith in other things. God, my prayer today is that we would have hearts like David, Lord, that we would know exactly who you are and what that means for us, God, and how that should impact our circumstances, God. Lord, I just pray for this church. I pray for the people, Lord. I pray for those serving, Lord, and those who are just doing their very all to honor you, God. Lord, I pray that you would see them, that you would smile on them, and that you would remind them of your great love for them. Lord, thank you for what you're going to do. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I just read a lot to you. I'm acknowledging that. I'm also going to recognize it was just getting good when I decided to stop. I'm fully well aware, guys, I know. I want to break down what happens here because I think the lessons in this are found a little bit more than a slingshot and a giant falling and all these things. I think there are powerful lessons we can learn from the buildup before the conflicts. So let's break it down. What we have is a Philistine army. They're attacking Israel. This was sort of the norm in this time. I mentioned last week, we were talking about Philistines a little bit. They were the primary enemy of Israel at this point. Pretty much from the days of Samson all the way up until David becomes king, they're the primary threat. They're to the south, and they would constantly attack. Now, when we meet them at this point in history, they have not had a lot of success. They kind of like lost 3 in a row, for lack of a better term. They've kind of been licking their wounds a bit, and they're entering into Israel, and they get to this hill, and they stop because they can see the army of Israel on the other side. So I want you to picture it. There's these 2 hills. There's a valley in between. Philistine armies here, Israelite armies here. Now, neither side wants to break the standoff because it would mean fighting uphill. Or you go down where it's a lot easier to get hit with arrows. It's a lot easier to to lose the fight, basically. It's a severe disadvantage to sort of break this if you know the other guy's not charging too. So there's a standoff. And we know the standoff lasts 40 days. Now, like I said, the Philistines have been kind of on a losing streak. So it would seem that in this approach, they'd start to take a different sort of strategy. And rather than just facing Israel, they send out a champion. They send out Goliath. They get their best guy and they send him forward, and they try to settle the conflict a little differently through really a trial by champion, a combat by champion sort of thing. They're sending out a warrior. They want Israel to send out a warrior, and rather than 2 armies killing each other, now it's 2 men. And I think what Goliath says shows the benefit of that to either side. If I win, you'll serve us. If you win, we'll serve you. So there's a workforce attached to this victory. It's not so much just we won the battle. It's, oh, look what we can do with all these men in our employ. So it adds an edge a little. Now here's the thing about this combat by champion thing. There is a religious aspect to it. Now every Israel versus Philistine battle had a religious aspect to it. I mentioned last week the Philistines captured the Ark of the Covenant. This was a big deal to them. They put it in the temple of their gods. Because by winning the battle, it made them feel like their gods were superior. You'll see this at the end of Saul's life. Eventually, he is killed, not by a Philistine force, but because of one. And when it happens, they take his sword and they parade it around the temple of their gods because it's a sign of victory. And in fact, the reason the ark was returned is because it was a complete menace to the Philistines. So at victory and defeat, it's clear it's decided by the higher power involved. And that was true of this trial by combat, this battle by champion. It's a circumstantial thing, and whoever won, it would mean their God was superior. Why am I sharing that with you? Because it should show you the mindset of the Israelite people in this day and age. Because here's Goliath, and yes, he's imposing. He's terrifying. 6 cubits and a span. That's what we're told about him. A cubit is about your wrist to your elbow-ish area. It's your forearm sort of thing. It's not necessarily the most exact measure. It's probably a little even longer than that to a degree. It's the length of your arm. So it's not an exact measurement, but the best number I could give you for Goliath, the best estimate is about 9'9". 10 feet tall, giant, killing machine, been doing it since he was a little kid. This is the best the Philistines have, and they send him forth. And it's clear from the passage, no one wants to fight this guy. Now you hear 9'9", and you get it, right? 9'9", killing machine. It's not like he's just tall and lanky. He's been doing this since he was a kid. It's not like he's a fool. He knows what he's doing. But let me tell you a little bit about Saul of Benjamin. The first thing we learn about this guy is that he's a foot taller than everyone in Israel. He's no slouch. He's a 7-footer in his own right. First thing Saul does as king of Israel is a powerful act. Israel's attacked, nobody wants to go out and fight, and Saul loses his cool. Spirit of the Lord comes on him, and he starts butchering oxen, and he says, if you're not going to come fight with me, this is what I'm going to do to your oxen. He's a tough guy. He's yet to lose to the Philistines. His resume is pretty good. I don't know if I'd put my money on him, but he's got a shot. He's got a real shot. And more than anything, here's the edge. Here's what I want you to understand about why no one wants to fight Goliath. Everything the Israelites had seen to this point showed them their God was better than the gods of the Philistines. The Philistines literally got the symbol of their God, and it terrorized them to the point where they didn't even have to fight to get it back. They sent it back, and they just sort of watch it go because they're horrified. Everyone should know they had an edge, and yet they don't go. They freeze. And it stays like this until David shows up. David is somewhat familiar at this point. Saul starts to kind of go a little nuts. And the only thing that can calm him down is music. And this is what brings David onto the scene. He's a talented musician. He's brought to give Saul comfort. And I think it's interesting, when David and Saul speak, they don't need introductions. Saul knows about him. He doesn't know too much about him. He's sort of the help at this point. He doesn't have a reputation per se, but he knows of him. David shows up, and it seems he's the only person who actually gets what's at stake here. Goliath comes out, and he says, I defy the armies of Israel. The Israelite soldiers who are afraid of him say, he's defying the armies of Israel. David shows up, and he has a different perspective. It's not the armies of Israel. It's the armies of the living God. You know, guys, we don't fight in Israel's strength. We fight in the strength of our God. This is the demeanor that David brings with him to the battlefield, and it's entirely unique among his people. Now, frankly, it makes him a little brash. I think we can admit that. The guy starts saying some stuff that's pretty wild. In fact, when I first shared this passage, earlier this year I was invited to speak at the Christian Club at Baruch. Our own Juan, you've seen him play the guitar sometimes. He was the president of the chapter, and he invited me. I decided to share this passage. And if you've ever spoken to young people, you'll read parts of the Bible, and they'll all giggle. And if you're like me, you kind of want to giggle too. But we got to the part where David's like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? And it is kind of funny. It's a crazy thing to say, and I think if you read it in isolation, you would think it's trash talk. We're really going to let the uncircumcised guy talk about our God like this, guys? Really? But if you look deeper, you'd notice more. What did circumcision mean to the Israelite people? What was the point? It was an outward symbol of their relationship with the Lord. See, everyone else looked at Goliath and saw what he had: strength, experience, size, athleticism, demeanor. They looked at the outward. But when David looks at Goliath, he actually sees what he doesn't have: my God. And I think it's the mindset, it's the thing that he's focused on that changes his confidence. Where your focus lies, that's where your confidence will be. When I am focused on something, the reality is I'm putting my confidence that at least it's the right way to go. If I'm focused on acquiring something, I'm putting my confidence in it that it will benefit me. When I'm focused on a deterrent, my confidence is in the fact that I can't overcome it. Does that make sense? And this is the very mindset we see in David. See, when David sees this uncircumcised man, he recognizes he doesn't have what I have. He recognizes there's something that distinguishes me. We talked about holiness last week, this thing that sets us apart from everyone else. And David recognizes it is not my talent, it's not my experience with the bear and the lion. It's not. The Lord rescued me in those moments. What distinguishes me is the Lord. And I think the most telling thing about the passage is that the people of God can forget that it is their God that distinguishes them. You know, I put my confidence in my ability. I put my confidence in my resources. I put my confidence in the people around me, and I forget that that's not what makes me different. No, it's the Lord my God that makes me different. And I think everyone else in this passage is focused on those material things, the physical rather than the spiritual, and it leaves them frozen in fear. The reason I stopped at that specific verse is because we see this very mindset even in Saul. All right, the kid convinced me. I'm going to send him out, but we won't send him out alone. We're going to put some armor on him. We're going to put my armor on him. Now, if you think about this for more than 5 seconds, you'll understand it's a completely ridiculous concept. Because the last thing I just told you about Saul is he's pushing 7 feet tall. And from what we know about David, he's nowhere close. David doesn't look like he's wearing his dad's clothes at all. He looks like he's wearing drapes at this point. The armor is gaudy, it doesn't work, it probably looks ridiculous, and the whole thing just doesn't make any sense. But it's in there for a reason. It's meant to show us where Saul's focus is. That if you're going to go fight him, you should at least wear some armor. Can I tell you something that strikes me about the passage? It's the description of Goliath. Because you'll realize that Saul isn't alone in this mindset and this focus. I think it's fascinating. We meet Goliath, we're told how tall he is, we're told he's from Gath. But the vast majority of his description, he had a bronze helmet. He wore a coat of scale armor. It weighed 125 pounds. Depending on how old David is, it probably weighs more than David. It's 125 pounds of armor he's got on. They tell us he's got armor on his legs. He's got a bronze javelin. He's got a spear shaft. It's like a weaver's rod. It has an iron point. It weighs 15 pounds. The guy's swinging a dumbbell on a stick. But we're told about his weapons. We're told about his armor. He even has a shield bearer. You're 10 feet tall, you're armored up, and you brought a bodyguard. What is Goliath focused on? The heartbreaking reality is the same thing that Saul is focused on. And I think there's a lesson for all of us in that. Because as the people of God, we tend to focus on the things the world focuses on. And what's conveyed in this passage is that when the people of God are obsessed with the things the people of the world are focused on, it gets really hard to tell us apart, doesn't it? And yet, what are we? What is the point of the holiness God conveys on us? That they would know that we're different. That they would know that we're set apart. And when I look at the passage, it leads me to consider where I put my confidence. Look, I went to Sunday school. I know how to answer the question. My confidence is in the Lord. Look, I've given the same answer that I'm sure many of you have when someone was shaken. Well, you just got to trust in the Lord, man, as if they didn't think of it, right? As if that was never on their mind. It's easy to say our confidence is in the Lord. It's easy for me to say that. But can I tell you, I think my actions betray me. Because prayer is not a first response, it's a last resort. To my shame, there are times I'm surprised it works. And I think that's what can happen to someone when they start focusing on the things of the world. And yet it is not the response of someone who knows what distinguishes them. It's the response of someone who trusts in his own strength. The beautiful thing about David is he often gives us a way to refocus our mindset, and he does that exact thing in this passage. Saul puts this armor on him. It's a completely ridiculous idea. I like to think Saul had an advisor who was just there, like, frustrated all the time, just really like, okay, we're wasting time, man, come on. David is polite. He's talking to the king of Israel, and he seems to give a diplomatic answer. I can't wear these. I can't go in these. My king, I'm just not used to them. It seems like a diplomatic way. You're not insulting the king. Like, he's not saying this is ridiculous. He's saying, oh, I'm just not used to them. But can I tell you, when I look into that term, I came across something fascinating. The literal thing that David says is, I haven't tested these. I haven't tested them. Now, the word tested is the same word that's used in the New Testament. It's used by Peter. And Peter says something interesting. He talks about the trials we go through in life. And he says, in all this you greatly rejoice. Though now for a while you've had to suffer grief and different kinds of trials. The same word that's used for these different kinds of trials, it's the same word used for the testing of the armor. And Peter says these trials, this testing, it produces something. A proven genuineness of your faith. It shows that it's of greater worth than gold. And when I see that David says, I haven't tested these, he's not saying, well, I'm just not used to fighting in armor. He's saying, I don't really think I need the armor. Because it hasn't proven its worth to me. I didn't have armor when I had to fight a lion. I didn't have armor when I had to fight the bear. He focused on what he had rather than what he didn't have in his previous trials. And I think that's something we can learn from and apply to our own life. Because I think about what my armor is. And I think we have a lot of armor in our lives, don't we? The things we try to acquire for ourselves to feel secure. And I think if we're honest, we spend a lot of time trying to acquire more. And for some of us, we're chasing things we've never had to get somewhere we've never been, and quite frankly, we don't even know if we're going to like it. And when I think about the different types of armor, I think about money. We often try to get more, don't we? When we're panicked, when it looks like the walls are closing in, what do? We go get a second job. We go figure something out. We got to get a side hustle. We got to find a way to get more, rather than thinking about the times where we had less and our God was good anyway. And I'll be honest with you, given what year it is, I think we put a lot of faith in our candidates. I think we like to armor ourselves in candidates. I just won't feel safe if that other guy wins, or girl. That's all of us. I don't care which side you're on. I just won't feel safe. I need these policies. I need to know we're headed in this direction, otherwise I won't feel secure. I think we have a lot of forms of armor. Our knowledge. I need to know more before I can take that on. Our titles, our status symbols. There are so many things we armor ourselves in to try to cover our insecurities, and yet they're fallible. Goliath's got more armor than any of them, and a little kid washed them. For lack of a better term, he wrecked them. We joke about all these good sports teams that blow these major leads and stuff. Goliath is the original, and no one's topped them. I think it's pretty clear where I'm getting at. The things we're chasing, I don't know if they're as valuable as we tend to convey. Now, I do want to throw a caveat out here. I think it's important to recognize something. I'm not going to beat anyone up for trying to acquire the things they need. The Lord Jesus, who wandered around for 3 years, basically homeless, even said, look, there are things you need. Your heavenly Father knows you need them. It's okay to go and seek what you need. I don't want to beat anyone up for being concerned, and I think sometimes we can get in the opposite mindset, where I'm trying to give up even the things I need. And we start to flirt with the works-based gospel. I want to be clear about the exact thing I'm talking about here. I don't want you to be unconcerned with problems. What I am worried about is that sometimes we are consumed by our concerns. I think we know the difference between what I need and what I'm obsessed with. And I think there are healthy little benchmarks in our lives that give away. I don't want to call out need, I want to call out obsession. What am I so focused on that it's keeping me from a godly response? I think there are healthy questions we can ask ourselves. Am I so concerned with this election that I can't even talk to the people who disagree with me? Am I so worried about money that it has completely staunched my generosity? I think it's clear when something starts to take up too much of our focus. And if it's hard for you to tell, ask the people around you. If you spend enough time with someone, they're more than happy to tell you what you won't stop talking about, in my experience. And really, I'm just up here to remind you of something this morning, that we're not set apart because of our money. We're not set apart because of our party. We're not set apart because of our own righteousness. We're not set apart because of our knowledge, our titles. We're set apart because of our God. And I think rather than focusing on acquiring more, rather than obsessing about the circumstances that might not go in our favor, I think we need to do something that I'll actually say the people of Israel did quite well. Remembrance. Remembrance. If you look at the people of Israel long enough, you'll see there are times where they set up monuments. It tends to happen after big moments. These landmark moments in their lives where God delivered them. And they serve as reminders. Can I tell you, I think this is a practice we would all benefit from. We remember the season we went through that he carried us through. If we focused on that rather than on what we didn't have, I think our confidence would change. I think we'd stop reaching for broken things and start reaching for fullness. See, when I focus on the memory rather than the current circumstance, I'm actually reminded on something. I think a lot of the things we're currently worried about are things we've been through before. Maybe not on the same scale, but I've been through something similar. Anxiety isn't something we're necessarily born with. It's something we're developing over time, based on our experiences, based on what we've learned to be afraid of. And I think because of that, we have this opportunity to reflect on Yes, that experience, it created fear in me. But I'm also still here. I also got through it, and I know who did that. And I know it wasn't me. So this morning, I want to encourage all of us to remember who sets us apart. Because when we remember who sets us apart, when we remember like David, who said, when I fought the lion, it really wasn't me. I wasn't victorious, I was rescued. When I fought the bear, I wasn't victorious, I was rescued. When we remember that when I got through the storm, I wasn't victorious, I was rescued. Our confidence changes. See, when we lack confidence, we're like the people of Israel in this passage. We freeze. We don't go anywhere. We make no progress. And yet it's David who moves forward. And he does it because he has confidence in his God. I think we move forward with confidence. It produces godly responses of generosity, loving those who disagree with us, and overall humility. Now, I'm not going to give you a mindset without giving you a verse to meditate on. So here's your verse for the week. It's coming out of Psalm 20, verses 7 and 8. I'm going to close with this. The psalmist says this: some people trust in chariots, some people trust in horses. We trust in the name of the Lord our God. And verse 8 says this: they're brought to their knees and fall. We rise up and stand firm. Psalm 20, verses 7 and 8. Psalm 20, verses 7 and 8. Hang on to those. Let's pray. God Almighty, I'm grateful. Lord, first of all, I'm humbled. Lord, forgive me for all the times I thought I was victorious when I was really just rescued. Lord, I've been through enough in my life to remember the times I thought I handled that. And yet there were circumstances I knew nothing about that you had protected me from. Lord, I pray for humility of mind this morning, Lord. A remembrance of what it is you've done for us, Lord, and a confidence, Lord, that is unshakable because of it, God. Lord, help us to remember that what you've done before, you can do again. Lord, if the person I don't like wins, God, that's happened before and I'm still here. Lord, if I don't feel like I have enough money to get through it, Lord, it's happened before and I'm still here. Lord, help us to remember you and to keep you at the forefront of our minds, God. Lord, help us to remember that we are a people who are rescued, Lord. Holiness comes from being rescued, not from saving ourselves, God. Lord, and help us to remember that we are set apart for your glory, God. Lord, I pray not just that we have these mindsets, Lord, but that we impart them on the people around us, Lord. That the people around us start to see they are different, and they start to ask why. Lord, help us to be different because of you, Lord. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you're going to do. In Jesus' name, amen.